Hi, we're back with Matt. This is Carson. Sean had to leave. He's got deadlines coming up. So me and Matt are now going to attack this Paul Pope Batman. This has got to be from year 100, I assume.
It has to be.
Uh, and what tool are you using, Matt?
I'm using a Winsor Newton Series 7 number 5.
Number
Um,
5. Okay.
I have, I really just use either a 5, a 4, or a 6. I guess I also have a, nope, that's also a 4. That's really all I'm working with these days, anyways. And I think that I bought these brushes like a number of years ago at this point, so
I'm
they've
working with
held
the
up pretty
number
well.
2, and I'm used to making very teeny tiny lines. I mean, I've been making big strokes too, but I'm curious to see like how this tool, and I don't know, just working big, but I don't know. I'm seeing some pretty fine lines on here too, so I'm actually surprised by some of what I'm seeing here. I assumed it was like wild or
I think the thing that I feel like he does that I have a very hard time doing is that like a lot of his big strokes are all one whole like line.
yeah, one mark. That was one of the biggest things I think I learned on Strange Death is that drawing with shapes instead of like outlining something and filling it in, um,
Mm-hmm.
like compounding strokes and shapes together.
Well,
I
I think
feel
he.
like, and that's the calligraphy part of it, right? Like
Mhm.
it's just one mark. You're not really drawing so much as you're painting.
He's definitely doing the outlining and then filling in type of thing.
You get a big shape,
I think some of these places, yeah,
but like
not
here,
maybe not in this, but like not in this image, but
because to me, like look at Batman's nose. Like it now in my mind, I'm not going to like outline this shape like this and then fill it in. I would just make like a big one of his calligraphic marks like that,
mhm.
and then the eye is like a stroke, and then you can see him doing this bit here, and then coming
Yeah,
across.
but I'm saying like on this side of his face, like this is he definitely drew the line here and then filled in over here the shoulder and whatever.
Oh yeah, but that's like that has a like an edge around it anyways. But he's very much like that mark there is all one mark. What I'm saying is he doesn't go around like this shape here on his arm. I
Hmm.
think as a kid I would have done that and then filled it in, like gone around it with a Hunt 102 and gone back,
Oh
like put
no,
an
that's just
X
a
in it.
that's a brush line.
Yeah. But and a lot of this stuff in his up in his head too is just one big like brush mark like that and another big brush mark like that. And the way those shapes compound on top of each other is how he's forming his images, and that's what I really appreciate about his work. And like with Alex Raymond or all those guys that we were studying, I feel like there is a basic vocabulary of shapes that he uses
Hmm.
that he then kind of puts together.
Or like just the way that he moves his hands, like it's like this. I'm terrified about attacking him, but the pattern up on the top of his head just feels like he's just repeating the same motion.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. It's like whether he's practiced like his ABCs and has like his vocabulary, or whether it's just natural to him. There are these like certain shapes and motions that he makes over and over, and he's learned how to successfully construct an image out of that. And the older I get, the more beautiful that is to me, and like the better I want to get at that kind of image making.
Mhm.
There's a lot of artists that I used to really like that I think did, whether realistic or cartooning art, I thought they were very detailed, but to me they're overdrawn now. Like they go
Yeah.
and they render everything too accurately, and it's a mistake I still make because I spent so much of my life enjoying artists like that.
Mhm.
Uh, so it's really fun to work over someone like Pope that forces me into this like shape thing that I want to be better at. It's really hard not to just get right into his forehead because that's where all the cool shit's at.
Yeah, but I feel like I got to get the brush ready for that.
What do you mean by that?
I don't know. Like I feel like when I first start, um, and it's right now it's been holding a lot of ink, but it seems like it takes a bit for me to get to the point where it's like I can tackle like a big piece like that in one with one dip. You know?
Where like it's can hold enough ink to get
Yeah.
juicy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does get like, which is funny because Sean and Dave talk so much about starting with the big juicy marks and then whittling your way down to the smaller ones. It's funny. You're like, nah, I gotta wait till my brush can get really
I gotta wait
juicy.
till I'm ready for it, man. Um, I've been using though. I have been using the strange death like do the square marks to like get the point. And I know you said that it didn't work for you, but
It's working for you.
it's been working for me.
Okay. I think I do it, but not like not as an intentionally. I think it just happens. Like in creating a lot of these big shapes that he's getting here, you're kind of doing the same thing to the brush. And I
Mhm.
also think like when I roll my brush, I don't just roll it. I don't just do this. I like roll it and drag it to the side.
Yeah.
So I think that's getting that. It's getting the benefit of both. But I don't know. I actually find it harder to get the perfect rectangular shape than I find it to get a thin line. But this is the strange, Dave's speculation on what Raymond was doing is just making these rectangles. So when I'm talking about a vocabulary of shapes, like that would be a shape, and
Yeah.
then like making a triangle like
Oh, and
that.
then that.
There's just certain things like that that you can construct an image out of. Then
Although
I
I
think I've
always
got
do
a.
this
Sorry, go
stupid
ahead.
thing where I'm a lefty, and I always forget that I'm a lefty,
Oh shit, you're a lefty too. So is Sean.
and then I constantly smudge my ink.
Well, I mean that's I don't know. I could do that just as easily as a righty because it's not like English language writing where we're going in one direction.
Yeah, but I always start well, especially the way that this image is, where I just kind of want to jump into the hand, um,
Mm-hmm.
and that's on the left hand side, and so uh, it's like I'm setting myself up to run my hand through the ink.
What kind of ink are you using?
I am using the Sumi ink. Yes, Yasutomo
I
color.
like that stuff.
Yeah, it's great for the brush. It's terrible for a nib.
It's too thick for the nibs.
Yeah.
It doesn't flow out of the nibs very well. Is that why you have a problem with it too?
Yep. So I have like the speedball that I water down for nibs, but I haven't really been. I've kind of taken nibs out of my process.
When I first started on Strange Death, that was what I was doing is I used the brush or I use the Suma ink for all the brush work because I
Mm-hmm.
really liked the quality of it on the finished page. Like it just looks like black.
Yes.
Um, and then I would switch over to the speedball for all of the nib work. At some point, though, I was having a little bit of trouble. I think it was because I was in California and using air conditioning a lot. the sume was getting too dry, and I was getting like broken edges even on my brush strokes. So I've switched over to the speedball for everything, but maybe in Alabama I can go back to.
I like the Sumi. The Sumi's great. The that's another thing that like Pope talks a lot about if you, when you read interviews with him is like the like um there's like, oh, the ink is, there's temperatures and humidities and things that you should do based on all these other factors, and like there's a sort of zen of working or something.
Yeah, that was something that I talked to Dave. I tried to talk to Dave about man, I'm having trouble getting the shapes out of my brush that I want, and I think it's because of humidity. And his answer was just always like, you're not got the right brush technique. You're not, you're just not in. He thought about it like you're metaphysically in the wrong space, like spiritually, you're not.
Your mindset's wrong.
Yeah, I was like, I really do think like I'm in California and it's hella dry and I've got an air conditioner blowing, and if I have a humidifier going, it goes better.
I think that,
Yeah.
I mean, there's definitely that aspect to inking where I don't know, some days it just some days it's just better.
Yeah, and I do always wonder, like, what am I doing wrong today, or have I grabbed the wrong brush? Like today, my ink is flowing really nice.
I was about to say that. And I maybe I just refilled mine, like, so I just topped it off with new Sumi. So I wonder if that helps it out.
Yeah, Dave has talked about that. Like, if you don't use it within the first couple of days of opening it, like, just get another bottle. Um, I did top mine off as well. A couple of weeks ago, I was doing one and I didn't top it off, and I was really struggling. So that could be it as well, like fresh ink. But I do have a
Yeah,
big jar of it, and I just pour it in there. So I don't know why it would be, it's been sitting in a big jar, getting old.
Yeah, I mean that's what mine is. It's and I have like a old bottle of I can't even read what the label is, but it has the eyedropper, lid, which is nice because when you travel with it, it doesn't spill.
Oh yeah.
And then I just have that like I put a one of those command strips on the bottom of it, and then command stripped it to my desk so I can.
You know what I used to do? It was so disgusting. I had a bunch of silly putty that I got as a kid. And at some point I had mixed all the colors together and it became this like shit brown, sticky, tarry mess.
Mm-hmm.
But I got to, and silly putty is not terribly sticky usually, but it was so old and so abused that it was really sticky, and that's what I would do to hold my ink to my desk. I just had this lump of nasty ass silly putty, and it was great because unlike the tape, you could mush it to where the jar of ink is standing straight
Like,
up and down.
Yeah.
It's really great. Now, obviously, I have a flat surface to my right because I'm sitting at my desk with a little board in my lap. I have a question for you. When you're doing, it's always hard to see what each other. Jesus Christ, you're going fast too. Do you go up or down more when you're recreating his lines, or does it just depend on the line?
I think I go up. Let me think about it on the next few, and I'll tell you. I think it depends on the line, but I think my usual motion is an up motion.
Some of his stuff, to me, feels really like he's dragging it towards himself.
Mm-hmm.
And that was something I found. I tried to, for Strange Death, had to recreate some Jack Kirby, and I could not, because I do think I tend to draw up away from myself. I feel more in control rather than dragging down. And I just could not make the lines, and I started drawing towards myself, and all of a sudden it was like, boom, I'm getting them.
So you're a righty, right?
Yeah.
So that's like I think that there's got to be something about like which hand you draw with, and certain lines are more comfortable for you to draw.
Yeah, for sure. And
Um,
Sean is always very aware of when he's inking a right-hander because of the way the feathering goes. I don't know if you can tell.
I mean, like, this is probably the first time I've ever inked over anyone else's work.
Oh, okay.
So I've never even thought about it before. I did one like last year when Mignola was posting all those like pencil drawings. I thought, oh, that would be fun to ink Mignola, and then you're like, actually no, because there's only one way to do this.
Yeah, you
And
get out a
that's
micron.
right. Like if you try to bring any of yourself into it, it's not going to look right.
Yeah. He's pretty. As amazing as his style is, I don't think it's terribly mysterious.
No, and it's probably it's not a style that I think lends itself to like being fun to ink, because it's so if you aren't particular about it, it's just not going to look right.
That's either him or it's not.
Yeah.
I was looking at like a alien thing that was like Mignola inked by Kevin Nolan, and I was like, oh
Mm-hmm.
shit, it still looks like Mignola, kind of like even Kevin Nolan, who's notorious for imposing
Like,
his own will.
yeah, the only times when it looks anything different is some of the DC stuff that he did, but it's still pretty, it you still know exactly who it is, and the inks aren't doing too much different about it.
Which is to his benefit as an artist
Oh, for
that he's so
sure.
recognizable, but yeah, not particularly compelling as someone.
So I think that's
Someone
what's so
else.
much fun about the like Paul Pope's style, and why I think that after he hit the scene, why so many people why he brought back brush inking, because it's like, oh, this is a fun way to it's a fun way to draw, and it's a fun process, I think.
When did he come? Like, when was he doing his like first underground kind of? It was self-release stuff, right? THB.
THB was self-released. I think that he might have started with the Ballad of Dr. Richardson. Let me go grab it.
So I'm trying to think what would have been going on when he landed.
I think this is when what he started with, and it was edited by Robin Snyder, who edited all of like Ditko's stuff,
Yeah,
self-published stuff.
interesting.
And so but like you can see the Popeisms in it, but you can also see where it's all the things that he ends up. You can see all the growth, but it's a good book, and it's like with most of Pope's book, it's a romantic. It is a romantic story.
Interesting, because you were mentioning like Atlas Shrugged
Mm-hmm.
and just the connection there to Ditko.
Oh
Like
yeah,
being
I mean,
a hardcore objectivist if the Robin Snyder character was publishing it.
yeah, and I think that there's um, a lot there, and I've emailed with Robin a bunch, and Robin's like a real historian of comics and stuff. So
But you don't think that the connection there was the
oh, I think that the subject matter is a connection, for sure, and again, Dr. Richardson is also has a lot of those themes in it, but Pope takes those themes and is I think he's far more subtle with them than Ditko is. Subtlety is not Ditko's thing.
No, he's kind of a hammer.
Yeah, which is but I still think like all that stuff is still so prolific because it's so singular, and he did it for so long, and he didn't care if anyone read it or not.
Yeah. I've tried. I can't. It's hard for me.
They're not easy reads.
No,
but
and it's just, I don't know.
But
like I don't agree with it either. Like I can't vibe with what he's saying, so it's just like some guy shouting like really bad ideas at me.
I like his but I like how dedicated he is to himself in that sense.
And I think that ideas.
Yeah, but like there's like, he said this is what I want to do, and he just did it. And I feel like that's this with Pope, with like THB and all that. Like he's just like, I'm gonna do this story and I'm gonna see where it goes, and if I want to mess with different formats or different styles or different ways of collecting the story, I will. And he did. And it's such a shame that it's hard to come by.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I think as artists, we all always respond to like someone. I mean, that's what the 100% is about, is like people sticking to their guns or not.
Yeah.
And you get those guys like that. I mean, Dave is another one, love him or hate him. Like he's really stuck to his guns, and it's made him the singular voice that he is.
Well, and isn't that the thing that's the best part of comics, is that you can have a singular voice, like in a way that no other medium has a singular voice in the same way.
I mean, maybe a writer, an author could, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's cool. I think for some reason the industry kind of just accepts the outsider more because we all felt that way or something. Maybe I don't know. I like the collaborative aspect of comics, honestly. So I've plenty of stuff that I've done on my own, but it's not something about that's not like the thing I think about, you know what I mean? When I think about like why comics are cool, is the auteur nature of it. Like it's true, but I don't know.
I guess it's a lot of the things that I'm reading, and a lot of the things that I like the most right now feel like they're all auteur pieces.
Yeah, and I definitely like it and I respond to it, but I also think I don't know, there's something a little bit dangerous about it too. In a sense, like, yeah, I don't know, I'm conflicted about that. It's the same thing that Sean was talking about, like with the okay, this stroke he definitely made upwards. I can tell because of the way that the mark caps off.
Yeah. Well, the trees are like totally just thrown in there. Like he just knows how he draws a tree, and he throws these trees in.
It's interesting because here he went up and capped off of this way. I'm pretty sure, unless he's left-handed. But in some other strokes, I'm pretty sure he like came down.
You're outlining some of them, right? Like the tree over his shoulder. You've got. I also printed mine out pretty like light, so I can't.
Yeah, it's a little hard to see. You're going so fast though. I said you and Sean are so fast. I'm so jealous. I'm not really outlining much. I'm just trying to go like what I think was the stroke that he made, which is like that's that stroke. I can see that he doubled the stroke up. Sometimes I think he got it all in one, and my brush just isn't big enough.
Because I feel like most of these trees are like all in one stroke. Or
it's like this. Boom.
Yeah.
Boom. Yeah, for sure. This I just don't think my brush is big enough to get, so then I have to loop back up on it.
What are you using?
The number 2.
Oh.
So that could be a thing. So when was that book that you went and grabbed, that early one? What was it?
The Richardson one?
Yeah. When did that?
That was according to the inside front, 1998. But this is a 5th edition, so it says 93. So it would have come out in
When did
93, I'm
Bone
guessing.
first come out?
I don't know. I've never read Boned, and I'm sure that's a
Yeah, you're missing out.
bad omission. But well, I
'Cause
just started
seeing-
Cerebus, so
I'm
filling
seeing
on
some
holes.
Jeff Smith in here too. Maybe it's just because they both use brush, but he's the other guy I think of when I think of someone who brought like brush back. And just some of these lines in the trees remind me of somehow Jeff Smith. I just wonder if they were looking at each other and which way that went.
I would think that they would have been contemporaries in the self-publishing thing, right? Like,
yeah, they had to have been, and they were
they
both.
had to know.
Like Dave would have been introducing them both in Cerebus. Because he
Yeah.
introduced Bone in Cerebus as well.
And as Sean pointed out, he introduced THB as well. So
yeah, so that kind of makes sense. I never thought about that until I was inking, but especially like something about this tree branch here and the way he's doing these little like dots on it.
The little tacky marks.
Yeah, if you haven't really seen Bone, then you wouldn't know what I'm talking about. But that's a pretty kind of Jeff Smith nature.
I feel like that's just one of those easy brush, like those sort of brush shortcut lines or something.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, I gotta get my brush dry now because I want to try some of this cool. I'm just not fast enough.
Huh?
I'm not fast enough. Like I can tell he's going really fast.
That's the other thing is I feel like all these marks are quick, and that's why I'm trying to go quick. And I mean that's how I like inking my stuff too, is just go as fast as possible and then like accept your mistakes later.
Obviously, that's not my stuff.
No, you're far more exacting.
But I'm trying to get the ideal is to get that impression of exacting while being that fast and that loose. Like that's okay. That's 2 marks that he made right there.
I feel like that's the thing that he does. Like if you look at all of his background details, he does so much. He crams a lot of detail in, but if you look at the lines, it's just not. It's the impression of details, and like you were saying earlier, like it's the complete opposite of the Jim Lee styling, where it's exacting details.
Yeah, it's like drawing. I'm taking the time to be like, this is actually like this, whereas this is just like a impression. It's very impressionistic, an impression of what's back there, but a really good impression of it. Like, and that's what was fascinating me reading the book that I kept bringing up when we're looking at it on the, when we're actually looking through it, is it should just read as chaos, but yeah, he'll pack like 20 people into a background super small, and none of them are really with any kind of exactitude in their rendering, but it all still reads, it should just read as a bunch of mess, but it looks like individual people.
The way he draws crowds in the opening of that book is just it's amazing, because you know exactly what the crowd looks like, but he's not putting that much down for you.
But there's also still like individual faces somehow, which is like, dude, you're just making a mess, but you're getting an individual face. I don't think I have the right brush for what's going on the shoulder here, but I'm gonna try it.
There's like a little dry brush thing going on.
But it looks like one big brush, and I don't think my brush is big enough, so I'm gonna have to. I think he probably did that with 1 or 2 strokes of a really big brush, and I'm having to kind of fake it with multiple strokes of a smaller brush.
That's what I had to fake it as well.
And that's where I think you might be right, that he had like a number of brushes, and he's like, okay, for this, like put that down. Okay, back to work.
Yeah, you hear stories about like people watch. Well, so you went briefly to the Kubert School, right?
Yeah, for like
So I grew up next, like the town next to the Kubert School,
where were you at?
in Randolph. So right down the road.
The only ones I remember were Whippany and Parsippany.
Okay. Well, so like right next door to it is where I grew up. So I used to go there. You know, they had like the Saturday morning sketch class for kids.
Oh, okay.
But like you'd hear stories of like Joe the way he did kids. He'd like have like just like one behind one ear, and then like just like he just had, or he had them all in like one hand, and just
Like
knew.
Wolverine.
Yeah.
I never saw that because we didn't have access to that as first year students. Like you kind of had to get through the gauntlet to year 3
To get to see Joe.
to have him as an instructor. All the dudes that we had were working for Archie pretty much.
Yeah, there were a lot of Archie guys.
Yeah.
The
and Alex Stevens, he was the guy I remember because he was really cool to me. And he was like the one that had done, he'd done like a issue of Sandman and some of those DC like big books of stories. So
yeah,
he was the one that stood out to me as like he was the serious artist, but he had been a student there too, I believe. A lot of them were students who hadn't fully gone on to make a full living as a cartoonist, and so like they were still getting thrown teaching work, and that's part of why I left. Also, I was having terrible panic attack anxiety issues, so it wasn't just the Kubert School's fault. But I probably would have wound up leaving anyways. They sold it as a place that the reason people left is they just couldn't hack the workload. And I was pretty much a month ahead by the time I quit. So
I think it's hard to do like a 4-year on comics.
Well, it was 3 years,
or
I believe.
3 years. Okay.
Oh, this mark on his knee is so amazing, and I wonder if it's one stroke or two.
Which one?
This one where it almost looks like he started here and went up and then back
down. I interpreted that as a bunch of different lines.
I'm gonna do it as like that, and then this.
When you print your blue lines, what's the opacity you're using?
50%.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes lower than that. I'm doing it at 50% for these videos, I should say.
Okay.
So A, so people can see it. B, so I can see it, because I'm not really inking so much as just tracing. Like we're recreating. Someone was kind of leaving a dick comment on the Sergio Tepi video, and was like, you guys are just tracing what someone else did. You're taking all the soul out of it. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, we're trying to figure out like, how did this guy make these marks with what tools? We're not trying to.
Yeah, this isn't about if we could get a hold of the pencils, that would be another fun exercise. But if, especially guys who ink themselves, like you're not going to find their pencils necessarily.
Yeah, and we did that with Brandon with the Shiro, because we got a hold of the pencils, and then it's like, okay, well, how do you interpret this? But the reason we do this on the channel is because I had to do a lot of this on Strange Death, and I think Sean enjoys this as well, is you're trying to teach yourself, like, how is someone using the tools? What direction is their hand moving in? How do they, like it? There's a big difference between making a mark that goes this way and making a mark that goes this way. Like in one, they'll cap off leaning leftwards, and in one they'll cap off leaning rightwards. And I wouldn't have known any of that if I hadn't spent time doing this over Alex Raymond drawings. And it's like, oh shit, he's knowing when he wants to do this and when he wants to do this. And like, okay. And so that was a very instructive thing for me. So the more artists I do that with, the more I can just, oh, okay, boom, boom, steal all.
I think they're fun. I think it's a fun exercise. I mean, you can really see, and also, I mean, this isn't at size, but you can figure out like he gets so much out of that larger size that he draws at.
I think I got mine at size because I blew it up in Photoshop. You're at about at size. Wait, is that an
Yeah.
11 by 14 piece of paper?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the size the panel is. You might even be a little big. No, I think you're
Might
exactly at size.
Okay. Well, that's a good reason to work at that size. Was because you can make you have a lot more. In that one interview, he says like he's drawing with like his like more of his arm, and I think that it's when you're able to work at a bigger size, your details are no longer just like your little finger action. Like it can be more wrist action or more out of the elbow.
That's way healthier too, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm super finger drawer guy, and part of it is because I've always had to plant my hand.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if he's also more comfortable and capable of drawing with his hand off the board. Like that would allow him to work fast and not smudge.
That's possible. I do feel like he must, once he's inking, he must work really fast because all of his lines have an urgency to them that I don't think you'd get if you were like agonizing over them.
Yeah, I'm always curious about that because there are some people that I think go fast and then like Sienkiewicz, I've seen him draw and sometimes he's fast and sometimes his hand's moving slower than I thought it would.
Yeah.
Topi's the one guy I really wish I could see him draw because I feel like that guy's just like a tornado, and I kind of bet he's a little slower than I thought, but who knows?
There's one video of Kniff drawing online, and he seems to move pretty quick.
Yeah, and he seems like, does Pope ever talk in interviews about Kniff?
I'm sure he does, but I don't know that I have anything. I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
That's not a known influence on him.
I'm not certain. I know that like Pratt is. There's a big obituary to Pratt in the Buzz magazine. Okay. I know that he's talked about that. But I think that that Pope's whole style and the work that he makes is very much it is a fusion of European and Japanese sort of like styles.
Yeah. Well, like Sean said, some of his work actually, because of the calligraphic stuff, feels more historically Japanese than a lot of the manga, and that's something I've bemoaned before. I think is that how many manga artists don't have any of that brushy fluidity that I associate with the history of the culture and the calligraphy. And
do you think any of that has to do with the fact that there's more, I guess, of an assist, like a work like Akira has assistants, and I would imagine it's hard to do like a style like this one with the heavy brush line if there's a bunch of different hands touching the project,
because it's so distinctive.
Yeah,
it could be. I also think there's the woodblock tradition that's like, it's not stiff, but it's definitely more clean line, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Well, they had an exhibit of, I'm not going to remember his name, but the one woodblock artist that everyone cites, but that like Miller was aping for the Lone Wolf and Cub covers. But they had an exhibit of his work.
Yoshitoshi.
Yeah, it's probably Yoshitoshi. They had an exhibit of his work in Philly a couple of years ago, and that was cool to see. I went and saw that. That was neat.
Yeah, those things are beautiful. Absolutely.
you
And
can,
incredible to think that the colors, like 30 colors, all carved differently and registered against each other, like by hand.
yeah.
Talk about reproduction nightmares. And no weird like offset, fucking American comics can't even line up 4 litho plates,
uh,
and the Japanese are over there lining up 30 hand carved woodblock colored plates.
yeah, I feel like there's a there were a few pages in 100% that seems like, oh, the registration is off or something, or at least in my copy where the 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 tones and the line work seem like there's like a little halo around the lines or something.
Yeah, I didn't notice it until I blew that piece up, that I blew up, but there was that
Mm,
going on the finger, where the finger had like a different gray pad. It was like the same value, but the pattern was different. It was very odd. But it didn't look like it was spilling over from whatever was inside either. This part over here was super fun.
yeah, the whole this was a fun page to like panel to ink. I
Yeah.
do, I, but it's like it's so nice when you can. I didn't try to go to be too uh precious, but it was like
Yeah,
you kind of just get to make a bunch of silly marks on it, which is
I'm probably naturally a little too precious about everything, but actually it was interesting to me how familiar some of this felt, because to me Pope
mhm.
is a very unfamiliar artist, but areas like this are actually really natural to me. um, After having done the Strange Death stuff, like all of
Yeah,
the trees actually felt really uh, familiar type of marks. It's the marks I really love from Pope are like these ones here. Well, he'll go like thin. I'll just do one over off to the side. He'll be like thin for a long time, and then just boom.
yeah. Well, he also does those little like he's like those texture speed lines that he does where they're just, I don't know, he just layers them on like on the ground. Yeah, and they don't necessarily make sense, but they read as either both motion or perspective or again, like I think that they could read as just noise if it didn't feel like it was part of the whole. But
Yeah, and that's to me the biggest thing about him that I keep coming back to, is it should read like a mess, but it's so the totality of it's so coordinated, and it holds together in a way that it, I'm always most impressed by artists where I think like if I was if I had a student that was approaching that, like
mhm.
if I had young Paul Pope where he hadn't quite figured it out, I would be like, I would probably tell him not to do it that way. It's like the same with Sergio Topi. I'd be like, look, you've got a form like this. You're supposed to like go around, like, don't do that. And, the people who take what I would think is like a bad idea artistically and then make it so cool. That
Well,
always,
isn't that's what the style is like, the mistakes you make or things that are kind of against the rules.
yeah, like where you're deviating from perfection. But there's ways that you can deviate from perfection that are like kind of at least recommended
Mm-hmm.
and safe, and then there's guys that are like, okay, I'm going to, and it's probably totally just instinctive, kind of go against every best advice, and it will be better than anything that anyone who follows the best advice will ever do.
Well, I
And
think
I
it's like you're go through in Strange Death where uh, even with like Raymond, the realism schools and all that, then is there's still like that there's still some sort of level of like cartooning or like observation. um I had a thought I got track where I was going with it. Oh, but like the stuff that Pope does is again like this. It seems so much more exciting, and it's something that, and like you for the comics that you're doing, you're penciling digitally, right? Like you're doing layouts digital.
Yeah, I mean for the photorealist stuff. Well, I'm even working on something now where it's like I'm just making it up. It's a Ninja Turtles thing, and you know, so it's just all made up. But yeah, I'm penciling digitally. But for Strange Death especially, it was just like tracing photographs digitally, and that would just be pretty much like simple lines. There was no shading, there was no detail. It was just structural stuff. And in the early phase of the book, I was then totally I was picking up like microns and penciling in ink and scanning it and reprinting it out and then inking it with the brush. By the time it's into the what would have been volume 2 stuff, so where I like really take over from Dave, then I was just printing out the structural lines and just going straight to ink with the brush.
Oh, I guess I think the thought I was going to have was that is that like I think that the way that they all did it, I think that there's more creativity when you without the digital tools sometimes. Like the digital tools are really nice and convenient, but I think they sometimes have so many shortcuts built into them that you sometimes go with the easier way out. Or at least I was looking at the pages that I'm working on, and I noticed there are a few instances where I did that because it's like, oh, it's easy to copy paste this panel and like just tweak a couple things and it'll go.
Well, I mean, those guys were drawing so fast though that they took the easy way out too. Like they would straight up swipe from each other all the time. You know, like oh, there's a composition. I'm just gonna steal that, or you know, they would swipe from themselves. They would photocopy a panel. Like if you go look at some of, especially Stan Drake, some of his later. I don't think Raymond ever took those shortcuts. Really, he seemed to have a real like. I don't know. He was trying to prove something. But Stan Drake would definitely like, I'm just going to cut this, like literally like cut out, not even a photocopy, but cut out a figure from an old Bristol board and glue it onto a new one, you know, because there's a lot of repetition in those too. Yeah. I don't know. I think it's just up to the artist what they're going to do. And to me, tools change how you work. Yeah. But your ethic about storytelling is going to maintain the same. I hope. Yeah, this was super fun, man.
Yeah, you did a much better job at the top of his head.
Yeah, but you got like the Pope feel way better in the trees. Like I can see where Alex Raymond the trees and where you like have got the Pope vibes in the trees much better.
Well,
but yeah, these shapes are very familiar.
Those are tough shapes, and I also think that this V shape it didn't work out for me.
But those were the shapes where I'm like, oh man, I'm really familiar with this stuff from those old. And I guess like you said, it's a brush, and so it has certain things that it does. And I was really surprised because when I read 100%, I'm not looking at it going, oh, like this is a bunch of stuff I know. I'm thinking this is totally foreign.
Yeah, but then you see all these little patterns within it. Like when you ink it, I guess.
Yeah,
you can also see how nicely it reduces just based on looking at the screen versions of them.
Yeah, and that's what I mean about the vocabulary is those patterns in it that the artist uses to construct an image, and I love that, and I really do think there's a lot of artists these days that don't have those things. They just kind of go and they like draw everything.
I guess that's my thought with the digital thing is like sometimes if you're going all digital, it's hard to create that vocabulary because there isn't and I'm not shitting on people who work digitally. I use digital as part of my process all the time, but it's hard. I think you have to be way more intentional to create those marks because you kind of got to like, you have to pick out a different brush that has a certain texture or a certain, you know, you can't just grab one brush and then have all these different vocabulary marks as part of it.
I am seeing some people though. I think it's just maybe, I don't know about you, but I'm pretty, I kind of suck at using the digital tools. I'm not
I'm
very,
terrible at it. So
so I think there are a lot of people. The one that comes to mind immediately is Greg Smallwood, I think is his name, who's
yeah,
doing
he's
human target right now. He's
uh-huh.
obviously working digitally, but it feels so like they know how to make the brushes and they know how to make the digital tools have a vocabulary. So I think
Yeah,
maybe for me at least, my inability to do that is just I suck with the tool more
it's
than
true.
anything else.
He's definitely like there's so many uh like choices that he makes with those tools in that book that it's impressive. The art, like that one's a cool. But I think that he's also adapting like a process that he would have done traditionally, but with his digital. Like I think that his
Yeah.
black and white traditional stuff, he used a lot of charcoal and like you can see where he was. I don't know. I just it's that book is Small World's work is really good in that book.
But I think there's a lot of people who are figuring out how to use the digital tools to have
Yeah,
that intuitive thing. And I'm just not good enough at creating the brushes and manipulating them and controlling the pressure on the tablet and stuff. So
mm-hmm.
yeah, I don't like, because there's plenty of artists that pick up a pencil and just over render everything too. Like I used to love Tim Bradstreet,
Yeah, me too.
but that's a guy who goes in and like if there's like a wrinkle, and I made this mistake, I still make this mistake. If there's a wrinkle in a piece of fabric that has like the smallest variation in it, he's going to go in and map every variation in the
Yeah,
wrinkle instead of just
it's
making a mark that's like boom, boom. And
the he. I have a bunch of stuff when I first found Bradstreet's covers from like high school where I was imitating his style, and it's like, yeah, it doesn't
uh
work.
yeah, me too. I mean, you could definitely, if you look at my art, I'm sure it's not very difficult to see that that would have been an influence with the photorealist stuff, but
But
that's what
I
I'm
mean,
learning.
he was a great cover artist.
Yeah, I mean, he's an impactful imagist. I'm not shitting on it.
Yeah.
It's still cool stuff. I still like it, but as I've worked on, the stuff that I've done and matured, but especially working on Strange Death, I have come to see the sophistication in here
Hmm.
versus I don't know, it just seems less sophisticated. I'm not saying that's bad. It's just it's a different thing. It's like
For sure.
overdrawn and not calligraphed or something. I don't know. I'm always trying to find the word to talk about it, but it's like every little thing is like done like this.
Yeah, I guess that's the thing that I feel like I miss in a lot of comics, or that I'm always looking for in comics is and and, and is the like people who are simplifying things down or making things more like abstract and aren't chasing the like a hyper real, which I think is where like a lot of mainstream or Marvel DC books and like they're being pushed into like this very realistic, style, which isn't speaking to me as much anymore. I know when I was younger, I was definitely far more into the sort of realism angle, but now I just kind of want something that's more expressive.
Yeah, and my goal, or at least like, I mean, not in everything I do, but like I'd still at some point like to take what I learned from Strange Death and push it further.
Hmm.
And I think it's the goal that Dave had too, is how do you get both? Like, how do you be super like honest to the original stimulus and super realistic, but maintain the expressiveness as well? And like that
Yeah.
was the trick that Raymond played, is it looks like he went in and did everything perfectly detailed, but then if you actually look at it, it's like no, he just like slapped 5 marks down. And
Right.
I would like to
That
somehow figure out how to push that to the next level in terms of realism versus expressivism. I don't know, it's difficult, so it's a puzzle.
Yeah, I don't. It's a tough one.
Yeah, it is.
I'm just trying to figure out how I can finish things quickly and get stuff. Like so much comics can take so long. It's like, how do I get fast? How do you get faster, but still communicate, but also not like make a bad drawing? Like you want it to still be. I want to still put something out that you're happy with, but also like you want to be able to do it and not have the book take 6 years of your life.
Yeah, I had a very sad realization after we did the Sam Keith put me into a midlife crisis. We did the Sam Keith recreation, and I
Mhm.
had so much fun with all of his texture and mark making and all the different techniques he used. I was like, man, I want to go do a book that's like just chock full of this shit.
Yeah.
And I have, I realized like, hey, I'm 40 now,
Mhm.
and I have more ideas than I have time in my life now to finish. And I never realized that before. Like, I don't have enough time in my life. Even if I were to quit teaching and only
Right.
make art full time, I'll die before I can get to all my ideas. And I know I'm gonna come up with more because that's just what happens. And
Uh-huh.
that's fucking terrifying. Like,
Yeah.
like it was a really, I mean, you just have to let it go. But it was a really weird day where I was like, oh shit. Like, I never felt that before. I always thought like, at some point I'll get all my ideas out and then I can quit being a fucking artist and just move on with my life.
And you realize it's never going to happen.
Yeah, I'm always going to be an artist. Shit.
That's but I keep looking at like, oh shit, I should have made these. There are books and ideas that I have had that maybe if I didn't waste so much of my 20s, I would have started working on them then. But then you realize, I didn't have I wouldn't have made anything worthwhile then. So now it's just like, okay, how do we maximize the time today?
Are there some of those ideas though that you like you kind of just given them up because they're not relevant to you anymore? Or
Yeah,
do you still want to
basically.
finish them?
No. I for a while I was trying to like reconfigure things and try to finish those ideas, but they're not. Especially now with the way that the world is, like so much of the things that I want to make right now are very much a reaction to and what's going on, like life now, and it's not. Why try to chase like things that I was thinking about when I was 24.
Yeah, that's why you said like, I wouldn't have done them justice, but you couldn't have done them at any other time. Like, you can't make them
Right.
now, right? So some of those things I think like, yeah, you should have done it then, and maybe it would have been embarrassing like 24-year-old shit, but it would have been only a 24-year-old could do it too.
Yeah, that's true.
Um, that's a question. I Sorry, I'm just interested now. We're totally done
Uh-huh.
drawing.
Yeah, no.
uh,
We should
you're
have printed
talking.
out 2 panels.
Yeah, I was overestimating how long it would take. I'm just doodling. You should just doodle.
I'll
I should
just
be doodling with the brush though. That's what
hold on.
Paul Pope would be doing. Um,
Let me be
Let me see if I can work in the spirit of Paul Pope now while we
okay.
chatter. Um, Now that I've actually done some Paul Pope tracing. So I have a problem
Mm-hmm.
that has been bothering me that makes me scared to work on anything right now,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't know how to respond to what's going on right now. Like, a lot of the stuff I want to do is just like people going about their daily lives.
Yeah.
And if you don't draw them in masks right now, it doesn't feel like real world.
Mm-hmm.
But if you draw them in masks, that might date it like 3 years from now. So I don't know, like, and I don't see a lot of TV shows and stuff where people are wearing masks, and that's just something that's interesting me about being an artist or making stories right now. Like, I'm curious if some of the stuff like how you're dealing with that, since you're saying you're trying to react to.
Well, the story that I'm specifically working on is, I mean, similar to like 100%, where it's set in indeterminate distance from now. I'm kind of just casting it slightly into the future, but I mean, all of the things that are going on today are kind of part of the story, but not, in the background. So I'm hoping that it's, due to the sort of pushing it into the future, it's not going to be as like dated.
Yeah.
But I feel like if I were to do a slice of life thing, I would just do, I wouldn't, like I wouldn't put people in masks or anything. I would have it be normal, or you know what I mean? Like I wouldn't.
But that's not normal anymore. That's like
I know. That's
we're like two years or something into that not being normal. So I wonder if that, at what point does that quit feeling normal to people in a fictional setting? Like I said, I haven't seen much TV and stuff that has just accepted it yet. They're still acting as if the fictional worlds, like no one in Hawkeye was running around wearing a mask, like,
right. Well, what shocked me is that there isn't really any art being made that's responding to what's going on.
It doesn't seem like it. No, not even hardly any music have I heard that.
Nothing. And that's very weird to me. Because I kind of, I remember like after, maybe it's different, but I'm not sure it is. But like I remember after 9/11, you couldn't. So much art was made in the aftermath of it that was responding to, reacting to, thinking about that.
Yeah, like we're all coping.
Right, and there's nothing. So I don't know. And I mean, like, I'm sure that there are some things, but they're not, particularly. There's nothing that's made any sort of impact, it seems.
I've heard some like rap lyrics that will mention it or something, but it's usually like Eminem making a shitty joke.
Right.
Like I'm about to take your breath away, like COVID-19. It's like it doesn't feel, I don't know. It's just, I wonder if that is because like after 9/11, it was like a one thing and you could say, well, that happened and now we're dealing with it. But as an artistic expression, I wonder if it's because people don't know, like it's the same worry that I have, like, well, is this gonna just, I don't know. It's a weird one to deal with.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like I feel like I have to comment on some of my fears for the future. So that's what this next book's about. So
In like a science fiction kind of way about like where this all leads.
Yeah, but in a similar like, slice of life type of story where it's not, it's not, there's the world building that happens in the background, but it's not about the world so much as it's just about people trying to get through life.
Yeah. I don't know. It's put me in a real, I guess, because some of the things that I wanted to do are ideas I had pre-COVID, a book that I was working on before I moved to Alabama, and like right before COVID hit, I was going around and getting photographs and stuff. And then all of a sudden I couldn't meet with the models because like you couldn't go outside and you would have to wear a mask. And it was like, I don't know how to work on this book anymore because I moved and I can't get to the models. But even if I could, like we can't go out in public and take the photos I wanted to take. And if I released a story about just someone going about their daily life and their job, I don't know, like at what point has it been long enough where that
you either
fake now?
Don't have to address it, or yeah,
I don't know. It's a real problem for me as an artist.
I just think it kind of weirds me out that it's not dealt with. It feels like it's not being thought about. I know that like Yeah, it just doesn't seem like anyone's doing anything, and that seems weird.
Yeah, I've noticed
Like,
that too.
how are you not processing what you're going through with your art?
But like, is it maybe because like we're all going through it together, so like people just don't want to hear about it? Like, who's gonna watch a TV show about COVID right now? You know?
I guess. I mean, I don't want to watch a TV show about it, but I would like to read. Like, if you're making like comics, like I would love to read however you're processing whatever your individual life is,
Maybe it's
and
just like too
through
many
whatever
people
that
are.
filter is.
Too many people are. I saw. God. I wish I knew who's. It's some artist I think that I follow on Instagram shared a story that someone else said, oh, like now I get why everyone in the Renaissance was painting pictures of fat people lounging around on couches, because they were also going through like a like a plague. So
Mhm.
like that's why all that works. So maybe that's it, is there's just nothing to say because like no one's doing anything. Like if people made comics about it, it would just be like I'm sitting in my room bored watching Netflix. Like how do you make a compelling.
I, I that's I'll send you the I sent you the well, you've seen some layouts for it. I'll send you the updated the new layouts for this book.
Yeah, I look forward to it.
I'm like almost 60 pages in. So it's getting there.
And it's people sitting around in the couch.
No.
Okay.
There is a bit of that. There's going to be a bit of that, but it's not you'll see.
But I mean, does that make sense of why maybe
Yeah.
people aren't like doing it? Is like, what do you do? Like you make a comic about how much more DoorDash you do now, or
Yeah, and I mean that's why I think that's why I wanted to set mine like not it's not historical. It's not like supposed to be documentary or historical or biographical.
yeah.
It's
And that will kind of like hopefully proof you a little bit from if all of a sudden we've got some drug that like makes it where like you get COVID and you can go take it and you'll be okay and we go back to normal. Like
Mhm.
your story doesn't become totally irrelevant.
Yeah, because it's not literally about it. It's
Yeah. So that's a smart
figuratively.
strategy. Yeah, and you'd think after 2 years people would have had time.
Yeah, you'd think. Um,
Maybe next year we'll start getting all the like 250-page graphic novels about my first COVID year.
yeah, like I don't know that that's what I want to read. I don't know how to explain it, but I just would like to someone to process something.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. It doesn't even feel like thematically anyone's on it. Like dealing with loneliness or
Yeah,
any of those kind of, you're right, I haven't seen many things that are dealing even thematically with what people are generally going through. It's going to be a bunch of books about people quitting their jobs and shit.
yeah.
All right, you're way better brush sketcher than me.
That's a bad hand. It's a bad hand.
You
It's
got
gonna
that.
be covered in black.
Oh, you're covering it with your hair.
Oh.
Anyways, so it's all good. I gotta try. You got that. I just got to be more crazy with my lines. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just doing me now. All right. Well, thanks so much, Matt.
This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, this is a ton of fun.
So
And
let's do this
I've
again
been
next
waiting.
time.
I've been waiting for an excuse to do some Paul Pope, and you're the perfect guy to do it with.
Yeah, this is fun. I loved it.
Thanks for taking the time, and I really look
Thank you.
forward to seeing your new book when it comes out, and we'll have to talk about it for sure.
Well, and let's do another episode like this sometime. We'll find some other brush artists to talk about.
Oh, we're gonna do that Hugo Pratt,
Oh, I have they're all in the other room, but I have so many different printings and from different countries and everything. There's all sorts of fun stuff we can go through there.
Yeah, we'll get to that eventually. All right, Matt. Have
Awesome.
a good evening. Take it easy.
You
Thanks.
too. Bye.